Good evening, everyone, and thank you and welcome to COFA. It's one of the pleasures and indulgence of an academic to be able to hold events from other organisations here at COFA, and one of my favourite professional organisations that I've been involved with is the DMI. So just who here is a member of the DMI or has been involved with the DMI previously? I think there's a few people that I've spoken to. It's a great organisation, and if you're interested in membership, there's a special deal for those who attended this evening, and you can just send me an email and I'll send you the paperwork. But one of the great things that they've been doing recently in the new executive changeover is to extend events from not only their conferences but local small group events like the DMI Night Out, which you're at this evening, and I can very proudly say that the best attended events globally have been the ones in Sydney so far, and tonight doesn't seem to be an exception for that. We are really fortunate this evening to have 3 of our 4 keynotes. Unfortunately, Tom is locked in with clients and it didn't sound very pleasant, so I think he'd prefer to be. It was being too provocative. So I'd like to introduce you quickly to Eric Folger from AMP. Eric, do you want to...
Hello.
Hello. Steve Beatty from Principal at Meld Studios. And recently in from Shanghai, Bob Nation, who is the design director at Barangaroo. Each of these panellists brings a very different perspective to the topic which we're discussing this evening. That topic is rather long, so I will read it to you because I couldn't memorise it. So the outer boundaries of design today may become the core competencies of tomorrow. In which directions must design firms grow to find value for clients, society and themselves? How can clients and society inform these new directions? And what is the adjacent possible of today and the impossible but inevitable of tomorrow? So without further ado, I will ask Eric to come up and give us some views that he's developed, and then we will hear from Steve and then from Bob. Okay, I'm doubling on technical issues today, so...
Brilliant. It'll all work out.
Multiple hats.
It'll all work out.
Okay. So...
That.
There we go. Thank you.
All right. Arrow keys will get me everywhere. All right. Hello, everybody. It's nice to see you all here. You're sort of all over there, which is kind of odd for me. I feel like I need to kind of walk away. That's right. So if you want to get up and sort of shuffle over, I wouldn't mind, but we'll kind of go there. All right, so the topic for this evening that I was asked to talk about, actually we were all asked to talk about, is exploring the outer limits. But before I get into that, let me just tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Eric, and I work at AMP. I'm a designer. I'm the principal designer at AMP. And you could also describe me as the only designer at AMP. That wasn't always the case. But there are a lot of keen design advocates at AMP, and one of the things that we're really struggling with is integrating design and design thinking within our organization. We are struggling with the boundaries of design and what it means and how it's significant to what we're trying to do, okay? But when I got the, this is actually what Selena just described. It's a lot, right? And it was hard for me to sort of pull that apart and to say something very significant about each one of those things in 20 minutes. And so what I'm thinking is that after I thought about it, it's more about what is the relevancy of design in design firms, and where are they now and where are they going. And so I thought I'd talk a little bit about that. So the first thing that I wanted to sort of frame is this concept of the specialist to the integrative thinking. Are people here familiar with Roger Martin and integrative thinking? Yeah. So, it's great that in the sort of the MBA world of problem solving, it's often that we come up with, here's option A, here's option B, here's option C. And the challenge for smart people in those organizations is which one of these is the right one, right? And so you're paid lots and lots of money to say it's option C. Whereas integrative thinking is really about, well, actually there's parts of A, there's parts of B, and actually none of C, and we need a D to come up with the right solution here. So let's use the breadth of knowledge and experience and all the assets that we have available to come up with solutions. So one of the things about this this problem with integrative thinking is that we're not actually set up to do that very effectively, right? And so the specialists so design firms are the realm of the specialist right now. Now, that's not to say it's a broad brush, right? Not every design firm isn't thinking, broadly, but a lot of them focus very specifically on one narrow aspect of what it means to be designful, right? And on purpose, in a sense, it's the only way the business model works with a lot of organizations, because they're coming to you and saying, I need you to give me a better website, or I need you to give me a better product. They're not asking for you to comment on their strategy overall and understand that a website isn't separate from the brand, isn't separate from the product, right? You're not being asked those questions. So one of the things that's really interesting about this is that the specialist nature wasn't the way it always was, right? I don't know, does anyone know who that is? Brunel, right? So if you're not familiar with Brunel, he was a 19th century engineer. He basically built bridges and railroads and a famously over-ambitious steamship called the Great Eastern. But the interesting thing about what Brunel did is that he was a designer in many respects, right? He didn't self-identify as that. I don't think they even used the term in the 19th century, really. Don't hold me to that if anyone here did design history. But the thing that's important about Brunel was that he was making all of these key things, and he was doing them all in a designful way. He really nailed creating really amazing bridges and networks of railroads and this ship. But what he was thinking about wasn't getting people onto a train or a boat. He was saying, someone wants to go from St. Pancras to New York City. What's their experience in that? And if it was going to be a good experience, I have to manage what it means to get on the rail all the way to the coast, to get off the port, to get onto a ship, and to take that ship across the ocean. He was designing that whole system. This is what people did. They didn't think small or specialist. They thought big, okay? So unfortunately, somewhere along the line, probably in the 50s, design really specialized, right? We went from design thinking to design thinging, I guess, right? And so there's nothing wrong with that, but that extra expertise and mastery has sort of led to us where we are today, okay? And I think that's a challenge that we're really trying to have significance to get out of, but people have, well, we've defined ourselves as specialists, and people see us that way right now. They can't imagine us doing something different. So one of the things about this legacy of design evolving into a world of masters is that we have these people who work on form, we have these people who work on function, we have people who work on experience, and we sort of lost a lot of those connections. And I think designers need to be more adaptive because the design problems that clients are asking to be solved these days are really changing every day, right? It takes more than just mastery of one skill. The environments are becoming more complex. We have multi-channel issues, products and services blend, and even branding is tied through digital. And so these touch points and experience cross real and virtual boundaries now, and even its internal stakeholders are our customers. So it's much, much more complex. We're trying to answer bigger issues. And so, actually, I think I talked over that one. Here we go. Apologies. So the promise is service design, right? And so this is my iconic image of the service design experience that I'm sure many of us have either been in or been part of. And the challenge here is to actually anticipate the needs of customers by understanding something significant about them and working through the levels of ideation and synthesis and analysis and ultimately getting to a point where you have a concept that can be tested and prototyped and implemented, right? And that's the promise. Now, the reality is, I don't know how many people here have actually gone through the entire service design process to implementation. Anyone? Very good. How successful was it after you left? Right? Yeah. Does work occasionally. Yeah. And so really this model, which we see as in many ways, I think most people would describe it as the purposeful direct extension of what we've done in the past, is having a lot of trouble staying, right? It's just not sticking. The professionals can do it. The professionals can lead this. They can facilitate this. It's great. People get excited. A lot of times, if you're in a client organization, the people who are exposed to this for the first time say, I want to do this. This is the greatest thing ever. And then you leave, and then it dies. Okay? And that's not necessarily your fault. It's the nature of the beast. Because we haven't really stressed what it is that we're doing when we're doing design thinking, right? And so design thinking is really about, or excuse me, service design, it's about design thinking. It's about critical thought. It's about the skills necessary to understand, do I know enough to have a significant opinion on this situation? More often than not, people feel like if you give them a kernel of information, they can jump into a solution. That's what we've been taught. It's sort of our Western culture. It could be Eastern culture too, I don't know. But the problem is we're in danger of losing our clients in that shuffle. We've been busy training for a sprint, right? But this race is a triathlon. We're not fully in this game because we promote very narrow areas of expertise, especially as far as our clients are concerned. And we make it hard for our clients to really find us and know what we can do for them, right? And so the challenge is to move away from this paradigm of being the elite athlete who's, can run 100 yards in under 10 seconds, and really say that we're in the decathlon, in a sense, to just keep whipping this sports metaphor. Servant master, right? I think most people can relate to this dynamic in sort of the client design firm role, in that often you are working against somebody else's desire or need or what they thought was significant, right? We've been looking for our clients to guide our efforts, and I think we're past the stage where we should wait for permission to do what's right, right? So what can we do about that? How can it be different? These are two organizations. I'm sure people here know more than these. These are the ones that I knew of. Hyphen in London and Valley Design in the US. Both of these organizations basically are a normal design firm for all purposes. But one of the things that they do is they create great things, and then they either sell them as the things that they created, or they take them to market themselves, right? They don't wait for someone to give them permission to allow their great insight or idea or understanding of a significant market opportunity to be deemed successful before it can go anywhere. They try it, they work with clients, it's great, they might learn something, but then they'll just go ahead and do it themselves. So I think this is sort of the challenge that designers have to start coming against, and design firms especially, is what is the model for being designful in the current society and current organizations. I don't think it's the traditional method. So they're obviously doing it. I think there's an opportunity also to grow and train designers in a way and embed them into organizations, into governments. But not into governments, it sounds like a junta, but into government agencies, utilities, places where right now most designers would say, I don't want to go there because it's not sexy. This is not what I do. But that's where the real design thinking needs to happen if we're going to elevate society as a whole, right? We don't need another beautiful widget. Well, we do need beautiful widgets, but we've got more than enough people who are working on beautiful widgets. What we don't have are people who are working on beautiful policy, right? So, one of the things is we can leverage the skills through university, through design firms. We can create these advocates and these ambassadors of design, and then we can put them into these organizations, even short term, right? So Jump Associates in California does this often. They'll take some of their consultants and they'll embed them into one of their clients' organizations for up to a year. Okay? Now the goal behind that is, it's twofold. It's somewhat selfish in that Jump wants to understand more intimately what are the problems really going on in this organization, and that gives them an opportunity to comment on it as a firm, right? I don't know if anyone recognizes that, but I'll get to it in a second. And design firms can't just afford to be reactive, right? They have to set their agenda and let their clients know what they can do. And what this is about is that if you go ask a client what they need, or ask a customer what they need, they'll tell you, right? And what's the problem with that? It's going to be horrible, right? This is a famous example of a car that was designed by focus group, right? It absolutely ticked the box for everything that the client, or the customers actually, said they needed in a vehicle. It was an abysmal failure. And there was nothing good about it. And it didn't sell well. It didn't work well. It had all these features on it. I think there was a Simpson episode where Homer did essentially the same thing. It was a comment on this real thing that had happened. We can't necessarily trust people to imagine their own future. And in fact, I would challenge any designer in this room to imagine their own future. It's very, very difficult. Our human nature doesn't allow us to really easily push beyond our own experience, right? And one of the things about being a designer is we have that objectivity to actually comment in a way that helps us, helps us understand what are the unmet needs, right, to not coin a phrase, and come up with a solution that's actually quite sublime, right? Because we have difficulty in understanding that for ourselves, right? So that's our role and that's our responsibility. If designers aren't able to be in a position to play that role, we're leaving a lot on the table. And in fact, we're cheating the process quite a bit. I don't know if you recognize this guy in the audience. This is one of the sessions that AMP had done when we did have a design group. But one of the things that it's trying to show is that the design firms have this same opportunity, is that we, as I've been in a design firm, I'm the client now. But as design firms, do we really understand what clients need? Do we really understand the problems that are going on in the world? Do we really think of them as customers who we need to go do ethnographic research, right, within their organizations to know something significant about both their culture, their needs, their wants, their opportunities, to be able to comment on it in a significant way? Right now, we're waiting for permission for them to come and say, come talk to me about my problem, and I want you to understand my strategy, and I want you. It's not going to happen that way, or it doesn't happen effectively that way. But how many of us know that when you go to anybody with a prototype, they can suddenly imagine a future that didn't exist 2 seconds ago? Well, can we do that for organizations as well? Can we go to them pre-armed, in a sense, with an understanding of what would be significant for their business? And then we become the conduit to do it, right? It's just easier to show and tell, and I think design firms need to help their clients imagine what could be. So solo to cooperative. Where do we go from here? While the end product of any design effort is important, I think involving your clients in the journey is, both participants and experts and decision makers, is now really equally important. They want to be, and they should be, a keen part of what you do. And it's a very different skill set to involve and utilize your clients systemically as well. I think this is a real challenge for a lot of design firms, and it's a challenge for organizations as well. People within organizations are time poor. They can't come and be on the design team through the whole process. It can be quite disruptive to have people who haven't been along for the journey to pop in and pop out. Also, if you're not there from the beginning, you're going to just keep jumping into solution mode at the end because you weren't aware. It's a nightmare. But it's the responsibility of, I think, design thinking as a process to really incorporate this well. I don't know that we've discovered how to do it effectively. I don't know of an example of where it's working extremely well, unless you have an organization that's already said, we are a designful organization and we make this a priority. That's pretty rare. The suit not seeing, yeah. I recently heard a talk, actually it was with ThoughtWorks, with Jason Furnell. And he had done, Jason's not here, is he? Good, so if I mess this up. Basically, he had a really fantastic insight, and the insight was about the maturity path of designers. All right? And basically what he was saying is, we all know the stereotype, and we might even know one of these people, and I'll use his term, which was the hated design princess. I think that's non-gender specific, actually. And basically, this is somebody who's highly skilled, but then gets frustrated by the lack of understanding from either their cohorts, the clients. You don't understand the genius of what I've just done for you, and I can't make it more blue, and it doesn't need to be more round, and all this kind of stuff, right? It's a very frustrating situation to be in. But what his insight on this dynamic was is that a lot of designers basically are focused on mastery of their skill, and that is the end point, right? Well, there's a plateau that's built into that. And what he's suggesting, Jason's suggesting, is that the actual next step is about facilitation. It's about taking the skills necessary to, say, do graphic design and use those to explore a higher context, right? And so it's basically using these tools and methodologies they can craft and explore and understand and collaborate and create. And I really think that that's the sort of that next evolution of what we do. We can't just keep pushing that our expertise is really desirable and wanted, because that's not the question or problem anymore. Let's see, I already went with that one, yep. Design firms are on a journey, and I think that's a journey. You can tell I pulled this together just before I did this. So basically my point is having the mastery and skills not enough to answer these complex problems the world is presenting and the people that are demanding the solutions to them. So as an example, in my own world, my challenge is integrating design in AMP, which is a very, very large financial service organization that by its very nature is risk averse, right? Risk mitigation is what we do on purpose, right? Because we handle supers, right? We handle investments. We're not supposed to go out there and start shooting from the hip and saying, woo, this could be innovative. But in many ways, we've focused very hard on the algorithm of managing this process, and we've lost people in that journey, right? And so I think there's a real need to sort of bring that back. But in reality, our organization, design, they're in a poor position to understand, to adopt, and to integrate design. They're just not ready for it. And I know one of the challenges that often happen is how many people have either promoted or participated in a trainer design integration. It's pretty common. I've been involved in 2 of those on the corporate side, and they fail miserably. And the reason they fail isn't because there aren't people who care and there aren't really good design training programs out there. They are. It's that there is no advocacy within these organizations to keep it alive. There's no one there to say, this is important and this is why it's important, and the second that person left, don't forget what was important about what they did, right? Instead, what happens is a lot of these training programs come with frameworks or some kind of checklist to go down, and people quickly start ticking boxes and saying, well, I did it, My wife Angela worked for Second Road, and they have a fantastic framework for doing strategy called the ABCD. And if Tom Key was here, he could talk quite a bit about it. But what we found when that was being used when I worked at Suncorp is that people were just filling in the boxes, right? And so everyone supplied their strategy, but no one had actually asked themselves the questions that it wasn't about this piece of paper. It was about prompting a discussion and a dialogue. But that had gotten lost because these people weren't there anymore. There was no advocacy left. AMP. You like our new logo? Doesn't it inspire you? So I chose to put myself at the coalface, right? I did this on purpose. It would be an understatement for me to say that I have little internal support within my organization. And that's not because no one likes me or finds me a bad person. In fact, I'm well-liked and well-respected in what I do. The challenge is that right now, the way we framed doing our design work is on top of, right? People are being challenged to do the work that they were hired and paid to do, and now I'm coming along and saying, okay, and do this. But I'm actually not saying and do this. I've never said and do this, but that's the only way they can hear that. What I'm really saying is, effectively, stop doing what you're doing. It's getting you nothing. and change the way that you're trying to solve these problems. We have tools that do it really effectively. We have ways to understand things in a significant way. And it's not hard, and it's not scary, and I will hold your hand while we go through it, right? And the people who've joined in on that, they've been quite receptive. But ultimately, here's, and I just quickly talk about this. John Gruber is a writer and technologist, writes Daring Fireball. And he made a comment about auteurs. An auteur is a director who basically has, decides the lighting and decides everything else. It's separate from a lot of studio directors, which they just manage other people doing these things quite well. Now, the benefit of the auteur was they have final cut. They have a decision that they can, well, at the end, they can make a decision about this is going to be in, this is not going to be in. Now, the challenge that we have at AMP is that final cut often can be somebody's opinion. So how do we say that all the work and effort that went into a designful approach to understanding something significant, how do we compare that to somebody saying, I've been in this business 20 years, that's not the way the customer feels, done, we're not doing it, right? That's what we're up against. So until we reframe the discussion within AMP, it's going to be very difficult for us. So that's the challenge we're up against. So, kind of wrap this up. What do I need, right? What do I need as a corporate citizen? Yeah. I need partners that I can depend on, to support this design journey that I'm on. Okay. I need skilled designers that rely on design thinking rather than a trademarked approach, right? I want smart thinkers, critical thinkers. I don't want somebody coming in and saying, here's the way we do it, because the way you do it may not be the most appropriate way to do this particular problem. I don't want people relying on that. I need innovation in building the foundational skills necessary for our organization, and that's such as gaining empathy in both little and big ways. In being divergent in thought rather than jumping to solution, and in testing ideas before I'm implementing them. I need to show how design answers the problems of the 21st century better than the current approach to business administration, right? So that's really my challenge. Ultimately, design has to sit at the table where these decisions are being made, and at the corporate level, and even within government agencies and communities as well. But both design education and practice needs to move away from design as a craft and more deeply explore design as problem solving. Okay? If design's going to change the world, we have to reframe the conversation. And at the moment, it's happening to us, not with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. We will be having a panel discussion, question time, and general anarchy at the end. So,
anarchy last.
If we last.
Anarchy last.
Anarchy last.
Yep.
Controlled anarchy.
Controlled anarchy.
Okay. There we go.
Hello. So my name's Steve Beatty. I have less time than Eric, so I'm going to speak a little more quickly and not do that. Go back. Okay. That's right. We're going to do that one. So I run a design studio along with a couple of other people in Barker, who's in the audience just here, Janet DeValda, who is not here. As I said, I have less time than Eric, so I'm going to speak a little more quickly, try and cover just as much ground as him, not quite. I want to talk about three directions for design, three areas in which I think, as we sort of look at where we are today, where might design take us over the next sort of 10 to 15 years, I'm fairly confident at least one of these is going to pan out to be true. The first one is this is a friend of mine who's his name's John Kolko. He's a designer. He's based out of Austin, Texas. He is a very, very good designer, and in the near future, you're going to see people like him and like you being asked to collaborate with physicists and mathematicians and biologists and biochemists on scientific inquiry, sort of hardcore, lab-based, How do we solve the problems of the world in a scientific kind of way using our design approach? The way in which we go about things today is that we've got, our design toolkit allows us to explore ambiguity, to entertain multiple ideas at once, something that science is crap at. One of the things about being, I'm serious, one of the things about being a scientist is that your career tends to be built around one line of thinking. You base your entire career and all of your credibility on how well you're able to defend a theory. And you defend it staunchly in the face of hard evidence to the contrary. And I offer for you the notion of dark matter and gravity as a really good example of people blindly staring into the face of evidence that contradicts everything they hold dear and ignoring it. Now, I guarantee you, within the space of your lifetime, everything we know about gravity will turn out to be wrong. That's one of the boundaries of design. We will tackle problems like this. Folks like John will deal in spaces like this, and we will answer questions around how the universe is structured. We'll answer questions around the fundamentals of physics. And the reason that I have some strength in that, like some conviction on that, is that some of the greatest scientific discoveries in history have come about from someone sort of looking at the world and saying, I can't prove this, but I'm confident that it's true. In the same way that design has put forward a vision of the future. And I'll offer you two examples. There's a French guy by the name of Fermat, who in the notes of, or in the margin of a manuscript wrote, this is true, and he sort of, I won't bother you with the mathematics, this is true, and I've got a neat proof for it, and it took 300 years for somebody else to prove it. And along the way, they branched into a whole area, like lots of different areas of really innovative mathematics, just to arrive at the conclusion that he was full of shit. There was no way that he had a proof at the time, and not some sort of neat little elegant proof. It took 300 years of hardcore mathematics to get anywhere near it. The second one I'd offer is a thing called the Riemann hypothesis, funnily named after a guy called Riemann, who posited a particular theory around prime numbers. And it has driven mathematicians, it remains to this day, $1 million prize to prove it right or wrong, to prove or disprove the Riemann hypothesis. If you want to make a cool $1 million, solve that one way or another. And it simply says that prime numbers of a particular class follow a particular pattern. And it has huge ramifications across a whole range of ways, including breaking all of our encryption technology. It's worth $1 million to crack. So far it's held up, no one can prove it or disprove it. Most of our banking and military security is based on it being right or wrong. So, folks like this, folks like him, folks like you will be asked to use your ability to deal with ambiguity and posit a solution based on incomplete information and work it through and let others clean up after you in terms of proving it or disproving it. This is one of the areas in which design is really going to play a part in the future. Second one, if you're involved, is anyone here involved in industrial design? Anyone design things? You need to really think hard about what it is you're designing. I hate to tell you this, but manufacturing as a thing where you design an object and we produce a few million of them and make some money is going to die. A decade ago, a 3D printer was $40,000. There were very few of them. They were sort of really cutting-edge technology. We really didn't have much in the way of what are we going to do with this thing and just how practical might it be. For $1,000, I can print a coffee mug in my kitchen and not have to buy the thing from IKEA. Now, admittedly, $1,000 for a cup versus $5 and a parking nightmare, I might go the $5, like the $1,000 might actually be worth it. But I live in a world where my twin daughters, who are currently coming up on 3, may never have to buy crockery. They may never go to IKEA and buy a plate. They may never buy a coffee mug. They may never buy something as simple as a piece of cutlery. They will print them when they need them. And they'll print it on a $400 printer with some feedstock made of plastic. And your job as a designer will be to produce the designs that they print on demand and then recycle. They won't wash the damn things, they'll recycle them. And tomorrow they'll print some more for breakfast. In the meantime, I'm trying to instill them with some, discipline around taking their plate to the sink. However, the point is that this type of manufacturing technology is feasible today. What it does in the next 10 years will be only more and more advanced. It will only be cheaper. It will only be more sophisticated. Last month, a guy printed out the components for a pistol and an assault rifle and made a working gun using a $1,000 home printer. There are now versions, and they're still in this $40,000 range, that also print electronic circuits. So you won't buy one of these in the future. You'll buy the plans and you'll print them at home. 10, 15, 20 years maybe. You may have to buy some components for something like this, but in a lot of cases, if you want a new watch, you'll print one. Watches are dead technology anyway, so you really won't do that. Last one. Sorry for the watch manufacturers in the audience, but that notion of like a physical object, you will not go and buy them anymore. Like the only time that you will go and do that kind of stuff is for a high quality, really polished, really refined, maybe with a special material type of thing. But day-to-day use items, you will just print them. You will just print them. So the last one, and this is sort of combining two things. Design has a really strong philosophical bent towards participation. We bring in customers, we bring in stakeholders, we bring in people from product and marketing and finance and a whole range of other areas within the organisation. We bring them together, and in doing so, we blur the boundaries between inside and outside the organisation. There are intellectual property lawyers who keep themselves up late at night trying to figure out who owns the intellectual property on the designs that come out of groups like this, because it's not entirely clear. And the NDA that you sign, or the release that you sign at the beginning of a workshop like this, doesn't necessarily sign over the intellectual property rights for your contribution in a workshop like this. So, hold that thought for a moment. The other side of this coin is things like Kickstarter, which have very, very sort of blurry boundaries between the people who contribute funds to fund an idea and the ownership model of the organisation. When you combine those two trends, the way in which we conceive of organisations and who owns them and who's on the inside and who is on the out will change radically. Your ability as designers to facilitate that movement of people from outside the organisation to contribute to what's going on inside the organisation will offer and will provide a fundamental component to the way in which organisations are conceived of and managed and run in the future. That will happen. We are seeing it at an organisational level. We are starting to see it with movements like open government. It is behind the sorts of things that we saw in the Middle East last year with the social unrest and the revolutions that went on in a number of countries. This notion of people demanding to participate in the major institutions that structure their lives, your role as a designer can be to help facilitate this work. You may choose not to. You may choose to continue turning out furniture and turning out chairs. And as I sort of mentioned a moment ago, that's a short-run proposition, but good luck to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. I bought 2 sets of cutlery yesterday that were really heavy. I'd like to print them out at home. Okay. Yeah, it would be, but they wouldn't be shiny. Okay. Now, which one do you want to watch first?
I'll say a few words and then
Okay.
if we can hit the button,
Right,
if you can just tell me what to hit,
Just
or
double click on there, and that's not.
that's, yeah, that one first, and then double click on that one. Great. Evening. My name's Bob Nation. I'm an architect. I'm completely out of my depth here. Any other architects in the room? I like it, so I can talk to you. And also, yeah, we have different kinds of architects here. I'm also from another time, generally. So my background is that I've been in architecture. When I first learnt the word architect back in 1956 at high school, and my art teacher said, that guy who did that folder is going to be an architect. And I said, wow, that is the best word I've ever heard. What's an architect? So an architect designs buildings. And I then, for the next 5 years, read every book in the library. And I was in Hobart, so it wasn't a long read. But it was enough to fuel a passion in my heart that I wanted to be an architect, I wanted to be a designer. So the kind of opportunity I have here tonight is really to talk very, very briefly about a little history. And then what I wanted to do was to show you what's been happening in a project that I'm now involved with called Barangaroo. And many of you probably haven't seen much about it. You've heard a lot about it. I'll show you some imagery that gives you a bit of an update about what's happening, and I'm sure there'll be many questions that might want to know about what it's really about. But I grew up in Hobart, as I said. I went to Hobart Tech College. I then went to University of Toronto, and since that time I've been wandering the world. I'm a nomad, and I've been in architecture for over 50 years. So I started where the idea of a 3D printer that was just not on the radar at all. But of course we use them all the time now for making architectural models. And it's the overnight status. You have an idea, and the next morning, there it is. And the next night you do another one, and you lay them out in front of the client. And in one recent kind of event in Chongqing, Norman Foster, who was part of our group, that we were designing some new towers, brought 250 models that he put on the table to kind of knock out the client. Well, that works in China. Yeah. So here it's a slightly different process, and Barangaroo certainly is another different process. But during my professional life, I've lived in many, many, many countries, but I've spent a lot of time in Asia. And what's really important to understand about design is that different locations and their different cultures brings about different attitudes and different substance and attitude to design. In Asia, it's very much design can be king. In the Western world, it's you make a proposition, you say, what? Let me really make some fundamental questions about that, and let's kind of evaluate, and let's kind of go through a whole kind of political process. So now living and working in Sydney, the kind of issues that are at play on a regular basis are fundamental. First of all, it's the idea. Secondly, it's the politics. Thirdly, it's society and the community kind of opinion, and a whole range of diverse kind of propositions that really, really do impose themselves on the final product. And Barangaroo is is very much part of that kind of process and has been. And you probably all know more about it than I do because I'm a recent arriver and I've only just come back to Sydney 6 months ago. My wife and kids have lived here for a long time, so I used to be a visitor. The second time around, young kids, it's okay. So I guess what I'd like to do is really show you a little about the passion associated with one extreme, which is a landscape architect, and his name is Pete Walker. He's 80 years of age, and he has designed the Headland Park, which is one component of Barangaroo. There are 3 components. The Headland Park, which is Paul Keating's vision for Sydney about realising the completion and the return to the natural circumstance of Headland Park itself. Then there's the Southern District, which is the extension of the financial centre of Sydney, moving towards the harbour to the west. And then there is a central zone, which is a big question mark at the moment, and that is designated as a cultural district. Big question mark. And the funding of a cultural district, of course, is a bigger question mark. But we're about to undertake an international competition to try and find an appropriate master planner that might result in a reasonable way forward that is appropriate and considered and of major contribution to the city of Sydney. So perhaps rather than yada, 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 I should show you the Headland Park. And you'll see Pete Walker in here, an 80-year-old guy, a very good friend, talking about the passion he has for the realisation of this one piece. Before that, for those who are maybe involved in graphics and stuff, you may know Gary Emery. Gary Emery is one of our national treasures, I suppose, as a graphic artist. He lives in Melbourne. I said to him, Gary, what does design mean to you? Gary said, continuous compromise and disappointment. Pete Walker doesn't feel that way about this. So there is a voiceover, so bear with me, and I'm very high-tech as well. Not. Great.
On the western edge of the CBD, an extraordinary transformation is underway. A 22-hectare former container port, Barangaroo is set to become a vital new extension of the city. In each century of Sydney's development, this site has been reshaped to meet Sydney's needs. In the 21st century, it's undergoing another transformation as a financial services hub for the Asia-Pacific, complemented by picturesque parkland and future cultural development. At Barangaroo, we're creating a brilliant place in the best place in the world. A fitting companion for Bennelong Point, the Headland Park will provide a new connection between people and the harbour, as well as recognising Sydney's modern and ancient history. Barangaroo will reinvigorate Sydney's position as a global city with new creative arts and cultural attractions. This internal space within the headland provides an amazing opportunity for Sydney. There is the potential for a 12,000 square metre multi-level facility within this footprint, with clear spans of 30 metres and heights of 14 metres. This area provides for flexibility for the future. The dramatic sandstone cliff face will be a key feature within this unique space. A dynamic, flexible space that can be adapted for a variety of uses. Peter Walker, lead designer of the Headland Park, says the construction of the park is like nothing he's ever done before.
Well, this is a really exciting time. I mean, for any designer, you know, it's great to make the drawings, it's great to make models, it's great to talk to people about things, but when you actually get under construction, that's the time that every designer waits for. It's going to be amazing to see the Earth rise back into the form it was in 1836. And I think people will be surprised at how large it is. I mean, people see headlands around. This is going to be one of the largest headlands on this portion of the bay. And I think that will surprise us. You're always a little surprised by the scale, but my guess is that it will be larger than anyone imagines and more powerful visually, both from the water but walking around. And so I think as this rises up, the really most important design element of it, which is its size, will become evident. I've never done anything like it, and I'm not aware that anyone else has ever done anything like it, and that's exciting.
Peter, I'm not sure if you actually know, but Balderstone's got a huge history and an affinity with this area. Obviously, starting at Bennelong Point, we built the Opera House, and stretching right across to just over there to our right, the Anzac Bridge. So we've had a long association with this part of Sydney, and for us to be involved with the Barangaroo Headland Park is particularly exciting.
Inspired by original landforms, the entire headland will be planted with native bushland and edged by rocky sandstone blocks. More than 70,000 plants native to the Sydney Harbour area are being grown for the park. Many of these indigenous species have never been grown on this scale before. Cycleways and walking paths will bring people right down to the water's edge, where they can touch the harbour and paddle in sandstone rock pools. When complete, this $6 billion precinct will be a vibrant place worthy of its iconic location on the world's best harbour. The Headland Park will be completed in 2015.
The next small piece is really about the Southern District, which just expresses the kind of imagery of the towers which have been developed by Richard Rogers' office, Rogers Stirk Harbour in London, and their local office here. But it gives a sense of the kind of outcome that is expected for this financial district. It should have a soundtrack, but it doesn't seem to be working. But primarily there are three towers, C3 on the left, C4 in the centre, and C5. And C4 and 5 are already let to tenants. And the investment group from Canada has actually put equity into the project to make it all work for Lend-Lease, who are the developers for this project. The towers will be finished in 2015, 2016, along with all the surrounding areas of lower rise buildings of residential, which are on the right-hand side, as you can see. And each of the buildings will have their own distinct character to do with the expression of external sun shading. They are zero carbon buildings, so it's a very responsible approach to the sustainable attitude to building. So it's quite unique in the sense of the development approach in Sydney. If anyone wants some imagery done, Arterra are the people in Sydney who did all of this work, so it's a plug for them. My role and title is Design Director of Barangaroo, and I've been there for 6 months. I don't design, I moderate, I mediate, and I act as a kind of a critic and try and maintain a process which will achieve design excellence, which is the fundamental kind of requirement for my role. So it requires an old head to really kind of mediate between the egos of all the kind of players that exist within this process. I think that is it. Sydney is a very unique place architecturally, and as people describe it to do with the rum core, sorry, I should have stopped. Too invigorating. And a lot of youth of Sydney in architecture have never had the opportunity to express their creativity through built work in the same manner as a lot of the emerging architects in Melbourne. I see it upon myself as a role to try and make opportunity for some of the lower buildings in this development to give the creative opportunity to the youth, and by youth I mean those people who are less than 50, say, who have never had the opportunity in Sydney to be able to build as a component part of this development. I think it's extremely important. It's also very important for these design firms to really diversify their skill base and their connections into a broader kind of team structure to address all of the issues associated with architecture and building in this political environment. The politics are big, the economy is very difficult, the social engagement is very substantial, so the community interface is extremely important. But often, and I think has been described before, it's extremely important that the overall fundamental creative outcome is not suppressed by the community process. Views must be listened to, they must be balanced, and also looking at supporting incredible creative outcomes. What has happened in architecture is, over the period of the last 30 years, is the emergence of the project manager. We see a lot of students who go through architecture, they come out as graduates, they do their prescribed minimum professional experience with a practice, and then they desire the money, the car, the travel, etc., and they go into project management. It's a very, very sad state of affairs. To be an architect today, it has to come from here and not from here. So I'd love to answer any questions in due course on Barangaroo, but thank you very much. It's been a great opportunity, and I really enjoyed the kind of previous speakers, and they've wound back my kind of years of attitude. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'd like to invite our panellists to come up the front. I'm sure you're all brimming.